Welcome back. While the South African government is hosting the European Commission delegation touring the country's vaccine manufacturing plants in Cape Town, the tour is part of government's efforts to showcase the progress made in locally produced pharmaceutical products. This is part of a series of bilateral meetings and events organized within the framework of the EU-SA Ministerial Dialogue. For more on this, I'm joined now by Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Sibongseni Dhlomo, who is actually leading this South African delegation. Dr. Dhlomo, always a pleasure speaking to you. A very good morning. I'm sure at this particular moment in time, especially what we've witnessed during the COVID-19 pandemic, still within that pandemic, of course, was the issues around inequalities when it came to the distribution of healthcare in the form of even vaccines. And the big conversation was, how do we ensure that Africa starts becoming starts getting to the forefront of being able to manufacture its own vaccines? And I'm sure this is in light of answering to some of those calls that have been made for even our own intellectual property to be housed within and see how we can actually become a leading competitor. How significant is this?
Thank you very much, and good morning for this opportunity. I just want to put it up front that the lead department in our government on this process is the Department of Science and Innovation in this manufacturing and the whole issue. We as health are going to be the extreme beneficiaries of the products. And you'll also recall that during our height of COVID-19, our president was then the chair of the AU. And when his term of office came to an end, the AU, in its own wisdom, actually appointed our president, President Ramaphosa, to be the COVID AU champion to ensure equitable access to vaccines and any other products. So WHO identified South Africa as one of those hubs where there could then be this transfer of knowledge, where we are going to visit Africa this morning. It's not only just for us as South Africa, but for the whole of Africa. And it is in line with the future vaccine preparedness, as we have said in our opening remarks, and many other re-emerging diseases. So we are very happy with this visit of the AU and other international support that we receive. It's very important that we as South Africa and whole of Africa do develop our self-sufficiency in the event of any future pandemics. We are not put at the back of the queue to access essential vaccines and other products and reduce our dependency on imports. So vaccines are very strategic products, and having capability to develop our manufacturing in our country and in our continent is extremely important. It will really go a long way to reduce our vulnerability in the future pandemics. Of course, many health specialists and scientists in our country are involved in this process, and that makes us extremely proud of this process, of this program.
Dr. Dhlomo, though we may be ahead where innovation is concerned as well as the manufacturing of vaccines are concerned, it does not help if the very same vaccines are not distributed or there is no appetite to be able to acquire vaccines. I'm saying this in light of what happened with the Gqeberha plant, where we found that, was it Aspenovax that had to be manufactured? I mean, this was hailed as Africa's first COVID-19 vaccination plant, right? We had anticipated that our community, our African community at least, states within the African continent, was going to be at the forefront of being able to acquire that. Quite to the disappointment, I can imagine, because there was no appetite. I think by late last year, the reports were saying not a single order had been placed from this touted Africa's first COVID vaccination plant. So that speaks significantly to perhaps the distribution of information that needs to take place, but also the workings of the continent itself. It doesn't help us to have innovation, science, and be ahead where vaccine manufacturing is concerned. But on the other side of it, there is no appetite to procure the very same vaccines we're trying to manufacture.
I agree with you more than 100%. Not only should the procurement be for Africa, but I'm sure the platforms like these are actually helping us as to we cascade the information early enough to show and actually our readiness and preparedness and the manufacturing plans that have already been completed. But not only should be the procurement be for Africa, procurement should be for the world. They should not be blocking the space and say, yes, you procure, you manufacture in Africa, in South Africa for your own continent only. So they should also be opening up that space. That is why there are very big discussions even at the World Trade Organizations led by our ministers on economic cluster. And those are issues that are critically important. I agree with you, let's manufacture, but let the market open up worldwide for even our products.
But then is the market able to open up worldwide? You know, we've already seen what happened when it comes to what we would deem as vaccine apartheid with the West, right? Where the World Health Organization itself had to go in and extensively criticize the manner in which vaccination accessibility as well as the intellectual property patenting of vaccines was actually handled. There was great criticism from the World Health Organization, speaking significantly to some kind of greed, maybe even strategic positioning of the West not to allow, for example, and simply because of the financial capitalism kind of system, not to allow the democratization really of the accessibility of vaccine, or rather distribution of vaccines. So is the West ready for what we are saying that we are able to produce?
We are happy that scientists in those countries were able to support our program and actually came very strongly to support that. Look, there's nothing wrong that South Africa and Africa has done. In fact, we should be supporting them and embracing. Probably then that's when we saw it was a very knee-jerk reaction that actually we saw from many of the countries in the West. But this showcasing and this visit by EU for us is part of actually indicating our preparedness, our readiness, and the availability, and not only to manufacture, but also to distribute worldwide. So I think we need to actually be positive and say this is going to take us forward. Our interaction also with the EU and the international community is just the way that we should continue in this trajectory.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there, Dr. Dhlomo. It is important where the EU starts coming to our shores and being able to see our capacity and being able to produce these vaccines. But I think also what becomes of greater importance is just us at home as an African continent. You know, if we cannot even sell to one another or even negotiate the distribution to one another, that we need the help of the West as well to come in and assist, where really it should have been Africa championing the cause from a distribution perspective. As I say, it's very sad to know that Gqeberha, touted as the first of Africa's first COVID-19 vaccination plant, had to close because not one single member state within the African continent decided to procure from us. You know, so now we've got the EU, and yet we've got right here our brothers and sisters within our states within this continent not wanting to participate. That says a lot about how we are working as Africans, as a continent, and how somehow we need to be ahead so that the EU can still hear from Africa and take Africa as a continent seriously.
Yeah. No, like I did mention in our opening remarks that the EU decided to make our president the champion of COVID-19 vaccines, and then the whole of vaccines and all other future preparedness in terms of pandemics. So I think that would be a work in progress, my sister. I don't really look at it negatively. Yes, that came in so rapidly, the issue of Gqeberha having to really be affected the way it was. But the progress is going to be made, and I think the champion that our president is making within AU and within the whole of the continent and further abroad is actually the way to go.
We'll leave it there. Much appreciated for your time as always. The Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Sibongseni Dhlomo, joining us this morning.